Questions. Good morning, everyone. Let me ask you a simple question. Have you ever noticed when a person who was once ignored suddenly starts succeeding, the world becomes very curious? People start asking questions. Who is he? Where did she come from? What's their secret? Today, the world is asking the same question about one country, and that country is India. For centuries, questions. India was known as the land of spirituality, scriptures, and silence. Today, India is becoming the land of startups, satellite software, and self-confidence. Questions. The world isn't just watching India anymore. The world is leaning forward. And my friends, when the world leans forward, it means something powerful is about to happen. Questions. Let me tell you a small story. There was a student in class, never spoke much, never showed off, always sat in the corner. People thought, he's average. One day, results came. Questions. He topped the class. Suddenly everyone wanted to know, what tuition did you go to? How many hours did you study? What's your secret? India was that quiet student for a long time. Questions. Now India is standing up and the world is asking, what just happened? Let me tell you something very important. India's rise is not about questions, tall buildings, big companies, or fast internet. India's rise is about mindset. For years, our mindset was, let's survive. Now our mindset is, let's lead. We went from questions, can we do this, to why can't we do this? Today, questions. Indian CEOs run global companies. Indian scientists send rockets to Mars at lower cost than a Hollywood movie. Indian startups solve problems the world hasn't even thought about yet. But the biggest achievement, questions. We started believing in ourselves. Earlier when people went abroad, they would say, I am from India. Very softly. Now they say, I am from India. With chest out, Wi-Fi on, questions. And startup idea ready. That confidence, that shift, that is what the world is noticing. Let me give you the truth. The world doesn't pay attention to noise. The world pays attention to impact. Questions. India is creating impact in technology, economy, education, climate solutions, healthcare, space, innovation. But here's the secret sauce. India doesn't just build machines. India builds meaning. Questions. We don't ask, how much money will this make? We ask, how many lives will this touch? That combination of modern mind and ancient heart is rare. That's why the world is watching. Questions. Let me slow this down for a moment. A country does not rise until its people rise from inside. India's greatest export is not through software or engineers or yoga. It is resilience. We fall. Questions. We just stand up again. We don't ask, why me? We ask questions. What now? This inner strength, this emotional intelligence, this spiritual grounding in a fast world. That's what makes India different. Look at India's youth. Questions. They don't wait for permission. They create platforms. They don't chase jobs. They create industries. They don't fear failure. They treat it like feedback. Questions. The world is not just investing in India's economy. The world is investing in India's energy. And that energy is sitting right here in this room. Let me tell you something personal. Questions. India is not rising because of politicians, not because of billionaires, not because of headlines. India is rising because of questions. The student who studies under a street light, the farmer who trusts the next season, the entrepreneur who fails and starts again, the teacher who believes in one more child. The world sees the success. Questions. But I see the sacrifice. And that's what makes this rise so powerful. Let me leave you with this thought. The world is paying attention to India. Questions. But the real question is India paying attention to its own potential? Because the future of this country is not in Delhi. It's not in boardrooms. It's not in Silicon Valley. It is in questions. Your choices, your courage, your character. Don't ask, what can India become? Ask, what can I become for India? Because when you rise, India rises. Questions. And when India rises, the world doesn't just watch, the world follows. Thank you. Questions. Let me begin with a simple truth we often forget in a world obsessed with numbers, salaries, and status. Money can build buildings, but it cannot build belief. Money can buy machines, questions, but it cannot buy motivation. And money can create comfort, but it cannot create courage. What truly changes the destiny of a person, a family, or a nation is not what is in their pocket, questions, but what is in their mind. Think about your own daily life for a moment. Two people can wake up in the same house, drink the same tea, walk the same road, and face the same challenges. Questions. One sees problems everywhere. The other sees possibilities everywhere. The difference is not in their bank balance. The difference is in their mindset. For a long time, questions. Many of us were taught to think small, play safe, don't take risks, be happy with what you get. These words came from care, not from weakness. But today, questions. A new sentence is slowly becoming part of our national thinking. Let me try. And that one sentence is more powerful than any investment, any policy, or any foreign funding. Questions. Let me give you a simple daily life example. Imagine a small tea stall at a railway station. For years, the owner sells tea in the same glass, in the same way, to the same people. One day, questions, a young person comes and helps him. He says, "Uncle, why don't we give this tea a name? Why don't we keep a clean menu board? Why don't we accept digital payment?" Suddenly, questions, the same tea becomes a brand. The same stall becomes a spot people talk about. The money didn't change first. The thinking changed first. This is what is happening to India. Questions. We did not wake up one morning and magically become powerful. We woke up one morning and started believing that we could be powerful. That shift is invisible, but its impact is everywhere. Questions. In villages where students attend online classes on a single shared phone. In small towns where young people start businesses from their bedrooms. In homes where parents who once said, questions, get a secure job, now say, if you have a dream, try. Mindset is what makes a student study not just to pass, but to understand. Mindset is what makes a worker not just do a task. Questions, but take ownership. Mindset is what makes a citizen not just complain about the system, but become part of the solution. Look at the difference between someone who says, questions, this is how things are, and someone who says, this is how things can be. The first one lives in the past. The second one builds the future. Questions. Let me tell you something beautiful about the human mind. It grows in the direction you point it. If you keep pointing it towards fear, it grows smaller. If you point it towards possibility, questions, it grows stronger. This is not just true for individuals. It is true for nations. Today you see young people learning skills that were never taught in schools. Coding from YouTube, questions, marketing from Instagram, designing from free online tools. Not because they are forced to, but because they are curious. That curiosity is the real capital of a rising country. Questions. And here's the most powerful part, mindset is contagious. When one person in a family starts thinking differently, the whole family begins to change. When one student in a class starts aiming higher, questions, the entire class feels the energy. When one city starts innovating, other cities start following. This is how silent revolutions happen. Not with loud speeches, but with quiet decisions made every day. Questions. You don't need a big stage to show a big mindset. You show it when you stand in a long line and still choose patience. You show it when you fail an exam and still choose effort. Questions. You show it when your idea is laughed at and you still choose belief. Money can give you a platform. Mindset gives you direction. Let me say this gently but clearly. Questions. The world is not impressed by how rich a country is. The world is inspired by how hungry a country is. Hungry to learn, hungry to grow, hungry to contribute. Questions. India's rise is not written in financial reports. It is written in the eyes of a student who says, I will be the first in my family to do this. It is written in the hands of a worker who says, questions, I will make this better than it was yesterday. It is written in the heart of a dreamer who says, even if I fail, questions, I will fail trying. So the next time you think about the future of this country, don't just think about roads, buildings, or industries. Think about thoughts, questions. Because every great nation was first a great idea in the minds of its people. And remember this, when your mindset rises, your world rises with it. Questions. Let me start with something we all experience in daily life. Have you ever noticed how two people can walk into the same room, wearing similar clothes, holding the same qualifications, questions, and yet the way they are treated is completely different? One is listened to, the other is ignored. One is trusted, the other is doubted. The difference is not in their resume, questions. The difference is in the way they carry themselves. That invisible energy, that silent message they send before they even speak. That is confidence. For a long time, questions. Many of us grew up with a quiet voice inside that said, maybe I am not good enough. Maybe others know better. Maybe I should not speak up. That voice did not come from weakness. Questions. It came from humility, from respect, from a culture that taught us to bow our heads. But today, something beautiful is happening. Questions. We are learning how to bow our heads in humility while still lifting our eyes in belief. Confidence does not mean shouting. It does not mean showing off. Real confidence is very calm. Questions. It is the quiet assurance that says, I belong here. You can see it in small, everyday moments. In a student who raises their hand in class even when they are not 100% sure of the answer. Questions. In a shopkeeper who puts up a sign that says, we accept digital payments, even if they are still learning how it works. In a young person who walks into an interview and says, questions. I may not know everything, but I am ready to learn. That readiness to learn, to try, to step forward, that is what turns confidence into a kind of currency. Because wherever you go, questions, whatever you do, people respond to how much you believe in yourself. Think about a simple situation like crossing a busy road. One person stands at the side waiting, hesitating, questions, taking one step forward and two steps back. Cars keep coming and the wait becomes longer. Another person looks, breathes and walks with steady steps. Somehow traffic slows down. Space opens up. Questions. The road allows them to pass. Life works in a similar way. When you move with clarity, the world often makes space for you. Today, questions. You can see this new confidence in the way people from small towns speak on global platforms. You can hear it in the way young entrepreneurs pitch their ideas, not with fear, but with excitement. Questions. You can feel it in the way artists, athletes, and creators put their work out into the world, not asking for approval, but offering value. And the most beautiful part is this, questions. Confidence grows when it is shared. When a teacher tells a student, I believe in you, the student stands a little taller. When a parent says, tree, questions. Even if you fail, the child walks a little further. When a friend says, your idea is good, courage quietly enters the room. Let me tell you a small story. Questions. Imagine a child learning to ride a bicycle. The first few times they wobble, they fall, they scrape their knee. The road has not changed. The cycle has not changed. Questions. What changes is the child's belief. One day they realize, I can balance. And from that moment, something shifts. The same legs that trembled now push with strength. Questions. The same hands that shook now hold steady. Confidence is born not from success, but from surviving failure. As a nation, we are going through that same process. We tried, we stumbled, we learned. Questions. And now we are riding forward with a little more balance, a little more courage. Confidence shows up in daily life in the smallest ways. Questions. It is in the way someone says their name clearly instead of mumbling it. It is in the way someone says no when something does not feel right. Questions. It is in the way someone says wise when an opportunity feels challenging. And here is the secret most people don't talk about. Confidence is not something you wait for. Questions. It is something you practice. You practice it when you speak up in a meeting. You practice it when you introduce yourself to someone new. Questions. You practice it when you apply for something you think you might not get. Every small act of courage deposits a little more belief into your inner bank. Over time, that account grows. And one day, questions, you realize that you are no longer afraid of the world. You are ready to meet it. The world today is not just looking for skills. It is looking for people who trust their own voice, who can say, questions, this is my idea, this is my work, this is my contribution. So when we say confidence is India's new currency, it means this wherever we go, whatever we build, whatever we dream. Questions. We carry with us the quiet power of self-belief. Not loud, not arrogant, but steady and strong. Because in the end, money can open doors, but confidence is what makes you walk through them. Questions. Let me ask you something simple. Have you ever held a phone in your hand and realized that this small screen connects you to the entire world? You can learn, earn, share, complain, celebrate, questions, and create, all with a few taps of your finger. But here's the deeper question. Are we using technology just to pass time? Or are we using it to change lives? Questions. That question is where the real difference begins. In many places, technology is about comfort, faster delivery, better entertainment, smarter gadgets. And there is nothing wrong with that. Questions. But in India, something beautiful is happening. Technology is slowly becoming a bridge between the privileged and the forgotten, between cities and villages, between dreams and reality. Questions. Let me give you a daily life example. Imagine a farmer standing in a field early in the morning. For generations, his father and grandfather looked at the sky to guess the weather. Questions. They touched the soil to guess the rain. Today, that same farmer pulls out a simple smartphone and checks the weather forecast, the market price of crops, and government schemes available for him. Questions. The land is the same, the sun is the same, the work is still hard, but now knowledge walks with him into the field. That is not technology for luxury. That is technology for dignity. Questions. Or think about a student in a small town who wants to become a doctor, an engineer, or an artist. There is no big coaching center nearby, no expensive private tutor, but there is a phone. Questions. There is the internet, there is a free video explaining the same concept that students in big cities are learning. Suddenly, the classroom has no walls. The teacher has no borders. Questions. The dream has no limits. This is what makes technology powerful, not when it makes life easier for those who already have everything. Questions. But when it makes life possible for those who once had very little. Let me tell you another small story. Imagine a woman who runs a tiny home business, maybe making pickles, clothes, questions, or handmade jewelry. Earlier, her market was her street, her neighbors, her local shop. Today, she takes a photo, uploads it online, and suddenly, questions, someone in another city, maybe even another country, is placing an order. Her hands are still doing the same work, but her world has become bigger. That is technology with a heartbeat. Questions. It is not about showing how advanced we are. It is about showing how connected we can be. And here's the most inspiring part. Questions. This purpose-driven technology is not coming only from big companies or big offices. It is coming from young minds in small rooms, from students in colleges. Questions. From problem solvers who look at everyday struggles and say, there must be a better way. Someone sees long lines at a hospital and creates an online appointment system. Questions. Someone sees paperwork delays and builds a digital form. Someone sees people struggling to pay and introduces simple digital payments. These are not just apps. These are answers. Questions. Let me slow this down for a moment. Every society uses tools, but only a few societies use tools to lift others. When technology becomes a way to include instead of exclude questions, to empower instead of impress, something deeper begins to grow. Trust, participation, hope. Look at something as simple as digital payments. Earlier, you needed exact change. You needed to count notes, questions. You needed to wait. Today, a street vendor holds up a small QR code. A customer scans, payment done. In that one moment, you see something powerful, modern systems, meeting everyday life. Questions, not in a fancy mall, but on a dusty roadside. That is not just innovation. That is integration. And this sense of purpose also changes the people who create technology. Questions. When you know that what you are building will help someone study, heal, earn, or survive, your work becomes more than a job. It becomes a responsibility. It becomes a form of service. Questions. Let me tell you something quietly powerful. The most meaningful technology is not the one that gets the most downloads. It is the one that gets the most lives back on track. Questions. A health app that reminds someone to take their medicine. A learning platform that helps someone pass an exam. A navigation tool that helps someone reach home safely. These may not make headlines. Questions. But they make mornings easier and nights calmer. And in daily life, you can practice this same idea, even if you are not a programmer or an engineer. Questions. You practice technology with purpose when you teach someone how to use a phone instead of laughing at them. When you help an elder make a digital payment. Questions. When you show a younger sibling how to search for learning instead of just entertainment. In those moments, you become a bridge too. Because in the end, technology is just wires, code, and screens. Questions. Purpose is what turns it into progress. And maybe that is why the world is paying attention. Not just because of how fast things are moving, but because of the direction they are moving in. Forward. Questions together with meaning. So the next time you unlock your phone, don't just ask, what can this do for me? Ask questions. What can I do with this for someone else? Because when technology serves the heart, not just the hand, it doesn't just change systems. It changes stories. Questions. Let me begin with a picture you see almost every day. A young person walking with earphones in, phone in hand, mind full of ideas, and heart full of questions. To some, this looks like distraction. Questions. But to those who truly observe, this is potential in motion. This is energy that hasn't yet decided what it will become. And that is exactly what makes it powerful. Questions. Energy is not just about running fast or working long hours. Real energy is about curiosity. It is about asking questions. Why and why not? It is about not accepting things simply because this is how it has always been done. And when a country has millions of young minds thinking like that, questions, something extraordinary begins to happen. Think about daily life. Imagine a house where an old light bulb has been flickering for years. Everyone has adjusted to the dim light. Questions. They know where the furniture is. They know how to walk carefully. One day, a young person walks in and says, "Why don't we just change the bulb?" Suddenly, the room is bright. Questions. Nothing else in the house has changed. But now everything looks different. That is what youth energy does. It doesn't always bring new buildings or new systems. Sometimes questions. It simply brings a new way of looking at the same old world. You can see this in small moments. A student who questions a chapter instead of memorizing it. Questions. A young employee who suggests a simpler way to do a task. A teenager who teaches their parents how to use a new app. These moments may seem ordinary, but they are tiny sparks. Questions. And when enough sparks come together, they create a flame that can light up an entire nation. Let me tell you a small story. There was a small shop in a busy street. Questions. The owner had been running it the same way for 20 years. He knew his customers. He knew his routine. His son came back from college and said, questions. Why don't we take photos of your products and put them online? The father laughed. Who will buy like that? He said. But the son tried anyway. A few days later, questions. Orders started coming in from places they had never heard of. The shop did not grow bigger. The street did not change. Questions. But the reach of that little business suddenly became wider than the road it stood on. That is youth energy. It doesn't always have experience, but it has vision. And here is something beautiful. Questions. Young people don't just dream for themselves. They often dream for others too. They start community groups, learning circles, social projects. They teach, volunteer, build, and share. Questions. They see a problem, and instead of saying, someone should fix this, they say, maybe I can try. In daily life, you see this when a group of students cleans a park without being told. Questions. When someone starts a free tutoring session for kids in their neighborhood. When young people raise funds online for someone they don't even know personally. These acts may not make the news. Questions, but they quietly change the atmosphere of a place. Youth energy is also about resilience. Young people fall a lot. They fail exams. They lose competitions. Their ideas don't work. Questions. Their plans don't go as expected. But they have something special, the ability to start again without carrying too much weight from yesterday. Imagine a child learning to walk. Questions. They fall 10 times, but on the 11th time, they still stand up. They don't sit in the corner and say, I failed 10 times, so I will never walk. They try again. Questions. That natural courage to keep moving forward is something adults often forget, but young people still carry. And that courage is contagious. When a young person in a family starts aiming higher. Questions. Others start believing more. When one student in a class starts working harder, the class energy changes. When one friend starts building something meaningful, others begin to ask questions. What can I do too? This is how energy spreads, not through speeches but through actions. Let me say something very gently. Youth is not just an age, it is an attitude. Questions. You can be 60 years old and still have youth energy if you are willing to learn, adapt, and try. And you can be 20 years old and feel old if you have already decided that nothing can change. Questions. But when a country has millions of young people who are still open, still curious, still hopeful, it has a kind of wealth that no bank can store. In everyday life. Questions. You see this wealth when a young person wakes up early to study for a dream that seems far away. When someone travels hours just to attend a workshop or a class. Questions. When someone practices a skill again and again, even when no one is watching. These are not just personal efforts. These are quiet investments in the future of the nation. Questions. And maybe that is the most inspiring part. Youth energy is not loud. It does not always announce itself. It simply shows up day after day in classrooms, in small offices, in homes, in streets. Questions. In ideas that begin as whispers and slowly become movements. So when we say youth energy is India's greatest asset, we are not talking about numbers or statistics. Questions. We are talking about the invisible force of hope, courage, and creativity that walks into every new day and says, let's see what we can build today. Because in the end, questions. Buildings can be repaired, systems can be changed, policies can be rewritten, but the fire in a young heart, when it is guided, supported, and trusted, can light the path for generations to come. Questions. Let me start with something very simple and very human. Think about the last time something did not go your way. Maybe you failed an exam. Maybe you lost a job opportunity. Questions. Maybe a plan you were excited about suddenly fell apart. In that moment, what hurt more? The situation itself or the thought? I don't know how to move forward from here. Questions. Now imagine standing up anyway. That quiet decision to take one more step, even when your legs feel tired and your heart feels heavy, is called resilience. And that more than anything else. Questions. is a power that doesn't shine on the surface but holds everything together from underneath. In daily life, you see resilience in the smallest places. Questions. You see it in the morning rush of a city where people wake up before the sun, travel long distances, stand in crowded buses and trains, and still show up to work with a sense of duty. Questions. You see it in a mother who manages a home, a job, and 100 worries, yet still finds time to ask her child questions. Did you eat properly today? You see it in a student who studies with borrowed books, shared phones, or under dim lights, not because it is easy, but because giving up is not an option. Questions. Let me tell you a small story. There was a small plant growing through a crack in the concrete on the side of a road. Cars passed over it. People walked past it. No one noticed it. But every day, questions. That little plant pushed itself upward, millimeter by millimeter, toward the sunlight. The concrete was strong, the plant was small, but the plant did not stop. That is resilience. It is not loud. Questions. It does not demand attention, it simply continues. As a society, we have learned how to adjust. Power cuts come, we light a candle. Roads flood, we find another way. Systems fail. Questions. We create workarounds. This ability to adapt, to bend without breaking, to keep moving even when things are not perfect. That is a strength many don't see, but everyone feels. In daily life, questions. Resilience shows up when someone hears no and still goes back the next day. When a small business owner opens their shop again after a bad week. Questions. When a young person applies for another opportunity after being rejected from the first one. These moments don't make headlines, but they build character. Let me slow this down for a moment. Questions. Resilience is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about accepting that things are hard and still choosing to move forward. It is about feeling tired and still showing up. Questions. It is about being scared and still trying. Think about a bicycle going uphill. The rider's legs burn. The road feels endless. But if they stop pedaling, the bicycle doesn't stay still. Questions. It falls back, so they keep pushing, slowly. One turn at a time. That is how progress often looks in real life. Not like a sprint, but like a long, patient climb. Questions. You can see this in families where generations work together to improve their future. A grandparent who never went to school makes sure their child does. Questions. That child makes sure their child goes even further. Each generation carries a little less burden and a little more hope. That is resilience passed down, not through words, but through actions. Questions. And here is something beautiful. Resilience teaches gratitude. When you have struggle, you don't take small things for granted. A stable job, a healthy day, a peaceful meal, a safe home. Questions. These things become blessings, not just background. In daily life, you see this when someone who has been through difficulty still smiles easily. When someone who has lost still helps others. Questions. When someone who has fallen still encourages someone else to stand. That kind of strength doesn't come from comfort. It comes from experience. Let me tell you something quietly powerful. Questions. The world often celebrates talent. It applauds success. It admires intelligence. But what truly keeps a person going is endurance. The ability to stay in the game long enough for things to change. Questions. Because life does not always reward the fastest. Sometimes it rewards the one who simply refuses to quit. In classrooms, you see this in the student who may not be the smartest. Questions. But is the most consistent. In offices, you see it in the worker who may not speak the loudest, but is always reliable. In communities, you see it in the people who may not lead from the front. Questions. But hold everything together from behind. These are the quiet pillars. And this hidden superpower also lives inside you. Every time you choose patience over anger. Questions. Every time you choose effort over excuse. Every time you choose hope over helplessness. You are exercising that strength. Let me leave you with an image. Imagine a river flowing through rocks. Questions, the rocks are hard, the water is soft, but over time the water shapes the rock not by force, but by persistence, drop by drop, day by day, year by year. That is resilience. It doesn't rush questions. It doesn't show off. It simply stays. And in staying, it transforms everything in its path. So when you look at your own life and you feel tired or stuck or unsure questions, remember this: you don't have to be perfect to move forward. You just have to be present. One more step, one more try, one more day. Because sometimes questions, the greatest strength is not in how high you rise, but in how many times you are willing to rise again. And that quiet, steady, unbreakable spirit, that is the real power that carries a nation, questions, and a person through every storm and into every new sunrise.